Montgomery Clift names the gay stars of old Hollywood who shared his secret, and wait till you hear who tops his list. The heartthrob America never suspected was living a dangerous double life. October 1956, a fog-shrouded Paramount backlot after midnight. Montgomery Clift, face still bearing the scars of his near-fatal car crash, slips a folded note to his director, whispering something that makes both men glance nervously over their shoulders. Fast forward to 1965, a private Beverly Hills dinner party where an aging Clift, glass in hand, finally lets the champagne loose in decades of studio-enforced silence. "You think you know Hollywood royalty?" he allegedly asked the stunned room. "Let me tell you about the real monarchy." Would you have stayed to hear his revelation, or fled before careers were shattered? Let's dive into the shadow history of one of cinema's most tortured talents, and the secret circle he protected until his dying day. Montgomery Clift entered the world on October 17, 1920, in Omaha, Nebraska, a seemingly ordinary birthplace for a boy destined to revolutionize masculine vulnerability on screen. Born to a wealthy banking family with aristocratic pretensions, young Monty was raised in a pressure cooker of ambition and refinement. His mother, Sunny Clift, a domineering force with social climbing aspirations, dragged Monty and his siblings across Europe for cultural enrichment, tutoring them privately rather than allowing them to experience normal American childhood. This nomadic, intensely private upbringing carved an outsider's perspective into Clift's psyche long before he set foot on a Hollywood soundstage. By age 13, the slender, hypnotic-eyed boy had found his way to Broadway, debuting in the 1935 production of Fly Away Home. Unlike the manufactured stars of the studio system, Clift arrived in Hollywood already a seasoned performer with a revolutionary approach to acting. He had studied the Stanislavski method years before it became fashionable, developing an introspective, psychologically complex style that would eventually reshape American cinema's very definition of the leading man. When Clift finally made his film debut in 1948's The Search, Hollywood witnessed something it had never seen before. A masculine presence that combined raw intensity with a fragile, wounded quality. Director Fred Zinnemann allegedly remarked, "Critics were mesmerized, audiences were captivated, and an Oscar nomination immediately followed." But it was Howard Hawks' Red River, released the same year, that truly announced Clift's arrival as a jaw-dropping new force. Cast opposite John Wayne, the contrast couldn't have been more striking. Wayne's traditional, broad-shouldered machismo versus Clift's simmering, psychologically nuanced approach. The passing of the Hollywood torch was happening before viewers' eyes, and everyone in the industry felt the ground shifting. Clift's meteoric rise continued with George Stevens' A Place in the Sun in 1951, where his electric chemistry with Elizabeth Taylor created one of cinema's most smoldering on-screen romances. Their famous close-up kiss, with the camera lingering uncomfortably long on their perfect faces, broke every rule of the production code without a single explicit moment. Film historian David Thompson would later write that this scene introduced genuine, dangerous eroticism to American movies. Taylor herself became obsessively devoted to Clift, forming a bond that transcended romance, a soul-deep connection between two beautiful people who recognized in each other a kindred wounded spirit beneath the glamorous facade. While Clift's career soared with critically acclaimed performances in From Here to Eternity and The Young Lions, his private life remained a carefully guarded labyrinth of secrets. Unlike many stars who played the studio publicity game, Clift refused to participate in arranged dates or fake romances. He kept no publicist, gave few interviews, and treated the Hollywood social scene with thinly veiled contempt. Studio executives, already nervous about his unorthodox acting methods and script demands, found his reclusiveness maddening. One MGM publicity director allegedly complained, "I could sell ice to Eskimos, but I can't sell the press on a star who won't even tell me what he had for breakfast." Then came the night that split Clift's life and face in two. On May 12, 1956, after leaving a dinner party at Elizabeth Taylor's Benedict Canyon home, Clift's car slammed into a telephone pole, devastating his perfect features. Taylor herself reportedly ran to the wreckage, pulled broken teeth from his throat to prevent him from choking, and cradled his shattered face while waiting for the ambulance. The accident transformed more than his appearance. It accelerated his dependency on alcohol and painkillers, creating the second-act Montgomery Clift that film historians often describe as the longest suicide in Hollywood history. In the painful years that followed, Clift's behavior became increasingly erratic. His drinking and drug use made him an insurance liability, and directors who once clamored to work with him now hesitated. On the set of Suddenly last summer, his condition was so dire that co-star Katharine Hepburn allegedly spat in director Joseph L. Mankiewicz's face after he mistreated the fragile actor. "You should be ashamed," Hepburn reportedly hissed. "He's braver than you'll ever be." What exactly she meant by this cryptic defense has been debated by film historians for decades. Yet even in his decline, Clift delivered performances of harrowing brilliance, particularly in Judgment at Nuremberg, where his 12-minute scene as a mentally disabled victim of Nazi sterilization earned him his fourth Oscar nomination. Director Stanley Kramer reportedly whispered to an assistant, "We're not just filming a performance, we're documenting a man's disintegration." The line between Clift's art and personal anguish had completely dissolved. Behind the screen, Clift's intimate life remained shrouded in secrecy. While studio fixers worked overtime to protect many stars from scandal, Clift required special attention. Unlike some actors who would play along with arranged dates and publicity stunts, Monty remained defiantly private. Jack Larson, who played Jimmy Olsen in the Superman TV series and was one of Clift's close friends, later revealed, "Monty didn't care about being in the gossip columns. He cared about truth in his work, and he saw no connection between his private affairs and his performances." As his health deteriorated and roles became scarce, Clift retreated further into a close-knit circle of trusted friends. It was during this period of professional exile that he allegedly began compiling what his inner circle called his fellowship list, a carefully guarded record of fellow stars who shared his secret life, men who navigated the treacherous waters of Hollywood's manufactured heterosexuality while concealing their true selves. According to those close to him, Clift viewed this not as gossip, but as a sacred historical record. The true story of Hollywood that would never appear in authorized biographies or studio retrospectives. All those battles carved a blacklist into his memory. In the final years before his death in 1966, Clift, increasingly aware his time was running short, gathered his closest confidants in his small, book-filled Manhattan apartment. There, with the curtains drawn and phones disconnected, he finally revealed the names in his private ledger. 10 stars who, like him, lived one life on screen and another in desperately guarded privacy. Rock Hudson. When Montgomery Clift first encountered Rock Hudson on the Universal lot in 1953, he immediately recognized the manufactured quality of the towering, impossibly handsome newcomer. A man whose entire identity had been constructed by Agent Henry Wilson's star-making machinery. Behind closed doors, veteran crew members claim Hudson sought out Clift's advice on navigating the perilous waters of being a gay actor in Hollywood's most aggressively heterosexual era. "Rock asked me how I'd survived without a beard wife," Clift allegedly confided to director John Huston years later. "I told him I chose pain medication instead." Hudson would eventually yield to studio pressure and enter a sham marriage with Wilson's secretary, a decision Clift viewed with empathy but refused to replicate himself. And the next name on his list made even Hudson seem compliant: James Dean. Clift and Dean's legendary meeting on the set of The Young Lions in 1957 sparked what crew members described as instant recognition. two raw nerves identifying their shared electrical current beneath the studio's watchful eyes. Dean, who had studied Clift's performances with religious devotion, reportedly kept a journal of observations about the older actor's technique and his carefully crafted public persona. Industry insiders noted that Dean's apartment contained well-worn copies of all Clift's films, and one cinematographer claimed to have discovered Dean mouthing Clift's dialogue while watching A Place in the Sun alone in his dressing room. "He didn't just want my career," Clift supposedly told Elizabeth Taylor after Dean's death. "He wanted to crawl inside my skin and understand how I survived knowing what we both knew about ourselves." The tragic irony wasn't lost on Clift, that Dean's early death preserved him in amber, while Clift's slow destruction was painfully public, unlike the next man who maintained a flawless facade. Cary Grant. The night Clift first met Grant at a producer's dinner party in 1949, Grant pulled him aside and delivered what appeared to be casual career advice. But witnesses recall the extended private conversation that followed on a moonlit terrace, with both men speaking in hushed, urgent tones about the arrangement Grant had with studio head Harry Cohn. Production assistants from multiple films reported that Grant would often call Clift's dressing room after particularly stressful days on set, seeking not professional advice but emotional solace from someone who understood the exhaustion of maintaining a public image so divorced from private reality. Cary once told me he'd spent so many years playing the perfect man that he sometimes forgot who he was when the cameras stopped, Clift reportedly confided to his acting coach. "That terrified me more than any warning could have." Grant's careful image management and his romantic friendship with Randolph Scott became Clift's case study in survival, though he found himself drawn more naturally to the next name's rebellious stance. Anthony Perkins. When Perkins and Clift crossed paths at the Actors Studio in 1955, an immediate kinship formed between the two intense, method-driven performers who shared more than just professional dedication. Fellow students recalled witnessing Clift taking the younger actor under his wing, warning him about specific producers and directors known for exploiting vulnerable newcomers and advising him on protecting his privacy. Director George Stevens allegedly observed the two engaged in intense conversation during a film festival, noting how they would stop talking whenever anyone approached, resuming only when they believed themselves unobserved again. "Tony asked me if it would ever get easier," Clift told a close friend shortly before his death. "I told him the truth, that you just get better at carrying the weight, but it never gets lighter." Both men's career choices seem to channel their private anguish into their characters, portraying men tormented by secrets and doubts, unlike the next name, who built an empire on swashbuckling bravado. Errol Flynn. On a sweltering Warner Brothers soundstage in 1949, Flynn and Clift's unexpected meeting during a screen test led to a night of drinking where the aging swashbuckler, famous for his womanizing, reportedly revealed dimensions of his intimate life never captured in the gossip columns or studio publicity materials. Crew members who worked with both actors noted Flynn's surprising protectiveness of the younger star, running interference with aggressive studio executives who questioned Clift's refusal to play publicity games. A longtime Flynn confidant later revealed that Flynn kept a private photo of himself and Clift aboard his yacht, hidden among countless images of his female conquests, a categorization that spoke volumes about the complex nature of Flynn's desires and public persona. "Errol told me his greatest performance wasn't Robin Hood or Captain Blood," Clift allegedly shared with a theater director. "It was playing Errol Flynn for the cameras every single day of his adult life." Flynn's ability to hide in plain sight, cultivating a hyper-masculine image that deflected questions, stood in stark contrast to the painful self-consciousness of the next actor on Clift's list, Sal Mineo. Clift and Mineo's friendship blossomed after both appeared in separate segments of the 1961 film The Young Savages, with the veteran actor taking a protective interest in the younger performer whose performance in Rebel Without a Cause had catapulted him to fame alongside James Dean. Industry insiders observed Clift counseling Mineo as the younger actor struggled with typecasting and the gradual cooling of his once white-hot career. Directors who worked with both noted that Clift frequently advocated for Mineo to receive better roles, understanding firsthand how Hollywood discarded actors who didn't fit neatly into marketable categories. "I see myself in Sal," Clift confessed to playwright Tennessee Williams during their collaboration. "He wears every emotion on his face, which makes him brilliant on screen and defenseless everywhere else." Clift's mentorship of Mineo revealed his growing concern for the next generation of actors facing the same impossible choices, though his relationship with the next name on his list had a far more competitive edge: Farley Granger. The charged atmosphere between Clift and Granger during a chance meeting at the 1952 Academy Awards prompted witnesses to describe their interaction as two prize fighters circling each other. Both having been considered for several of the same prestigious roles, and both navigating similar private realities beneath their leading man veneers. Party guests recounted seeing the two actors retreat to a private corner where they spent hours in intense conversation, occasionally glancing around to ensure they weren't being observed too closely. Theater director Elia Kazan, who worked with both men, reportedly noted the striking similarity in how they approached emotionally vulnerable scenes, bringing a raw authenticity that seemed to draw from personal wells of experience too profound to be merely technical. "Farley and I recognized each other instantly," Clift told his acting coach years later. "We were both running the same race on parallel tracks, and we both knew exactly what traps lay ahead." Their rivalry-turned alliance highlighted the isolation most of these men felt within the industry, a solitude that the next name on the list had elevated to an art form: Raymond Burr. During a tense network cocktail party in 1958, Clift observed with fascination as Burr, the newly minted television star of Perry Mason, masterfully deflected questions about his personal life with manufactured war stories and fictional romantic histories. Studio fixers who worked with both actors confirmed that Burr had constructed an elaborate biographical tapestry, complete with a fake deceased wife and child, to create an impenetrable shield around his private reality. Industry lawyers privately acknowledged that both men had separate clauses in their contracts, strictly limiting publicity about their personal lives. A rare concession that spoke volumes about what studios knew and chose to protect for their valuable properties. "Raymond built himself a fortress of fiction," Clift reportedly told director Fred Zinnemann. "I chose a fortress of silence, but we were both hiding the same truth." Burr's elaborate fabrications represented an extreme version of the performance all these men gave off-screen, though none embraced Hollywood's heterosexual mythology more enthusiastically than the next name on Clift's registry: T. Harden. On the Warner Brothers lot in early 1960, Clift encountered the Bronco television star whose aggressively heterosexual cowboy image and multiple marriages had created what studio insiders called the perfect cover story. Behind his rugged facade, crew members whispered about Harden's secret Hollywood life, which existed in parallel to his public persona as a ladies' man and TV Western hero. Makeup artists who worked with both performers noted the stark contrast in their approaches. While Clift made no effort to hide his increasingly ravaged appearance, Harden maintained an obsessive commitment to his flawless, masculine image both on and off camera. "Ty once asked me how I could live without a protective disguise," Clift allegedly told director John Frankenheimer. "I asked him how he could live wearing one every moment of every day." Harden's strategy of hiding behind hypermasculine roles and multiple marriages represented one common survival technique in old Hollywood, though none navigated these treacherous waters with more calculation than the final name on Clift's confidential list: Randolph Scott. The day Clift visited the set of a Scott Western in 1951, he witnessed firsthand the elaborate choreography of the actor's public life, how Scott and longtime roommate Cary Grant maintained separate bedrooms in their shared beach house when reporters visited, and how carefully Scott had constructed his image as a rugged outdoorsman despite his refined, artistic private interests. Veteran photographers confirmed that Scott's publicity team had strict instructions about which angles and settings were permitted, creating a visual narrative that supported his carefully crafted public persona. A longtime household employee who worked for both actors claimed that Scott kept a private collection of modernist art and literature that contradicted his cowboy image, interests he shared with Clift during their occasional private meetings away from Hollywood scrutiny. Randy created the perfect smokescreen, Clift reportedly told his brother Brooks during a rare candid conversation. A lifetime playing cowboys left no room for anyone to question what kind of man he really was. Scott's lifelong performance, maintaining a hyper-masculine screen presence while sharing his life with another man, represented perhaps the most successful navigation of Hollywood's impossible contradictions, a high-wire act that outlasted most of his contemporaries. On July 23, 1966, Montgomery Clift was found dead in his New York City townhouse, his body discovered by his personal secretary, the final scene in a life defined by brilliant contradictions. The official cause was listed as a heart attack, but those who knew him best understood it as the inevitable conclusion to years of self-medication and internal struggle. He was just 45 years old. The private ledger that contained his knowledge of Hollywood's shadow history reportedly disappeared that same night, either destroyed by loyal friends or secured in some vault where it remains hidden to this day. Clift's legacy extends far beyond the names he allegedly collected. His revolutionary acting style, the vulnerable masculinity, the psychological depth, the emotional transparency, transformed screen performance forever. Brando, Dean, and generations of actors who followed walked through the door Clift had opened, bringing a new authenticity to American cinema. Yet perhaps his most profound legacy was what remained unspoken: the complex reality of men who created America's masculine ideals while harboring truths that, if revealed, would have shattered those very ideals. The Hollywood these 10 men inhabited no longer exists. The studio system that both created and imprisoned them has crumbled. The moral codes and public expectations that forced them into elaborate deceptions have evolved. Yet their ghost images still flicker on our screens, captured in the silver glow of another era, their secrets now part of cinema's hidden history. Montgomery Clift, in Death as in Life, forces us to look beyond the perfect faces to the complex humanity beneath, reminding us that the most compelling dramas often unfolded when the camera stopped rolling. Which of these legendary stars surprised you the most? Do you think Hollywood's pressure cooker of public expectations created more authentic performances or prevented these actors from reaching their full potential? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you're fascinated by Hollywood's hidden histories, be sure to subscribe. Our next video explores the secret power brokers who controlled the fate of Hollywood's biggest stars. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss our weekly dive into cinema's most captivating secrets.